Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Deb Talks podcast. This week, we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Ann, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her and to hear what she's been doing. She is in the process of helping people make peace with their past, and that's always a topic of interest for me. And we are going to talk to her a little bit today about what led her to this path and how her journey has taken her, and what happened for her to come to this place of wanting to not just know about her own past, but also help others understand how to make peace with their past. So without further ado, everybody, here's Ann. Ann, please introduce yourself to our listeners and just take a few moments, 5 minutes if you need to talk a little bit about your journey and how you ended up here. And then I would love to talk about some of the projects that you're busy with, especially about the book, Making Peace with Your Past. And then also there's some workshops that you offer as a metaphysical healer, as a how do you pronounce that? Clairaudient? It's pronounced clairvoyant?
Well, people have different types of psychic ability, and we can talk about that.
That as well, because I saw that and I was like, oh, do you pronounce that clairvoyant or clairaudient? And I'll ask Ann about that. But without further ado, everybody, here's Ann.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on, and I'm so glad to meet you too, Deborah.
Yay.
And I don't want to make it long and cumbersome.
No.
But, I've been a Buddhist since I was 23, was pretty troubled, and I ended up working my way through college. And so now, here I am, I'm close to 60, and I've been chanting and meditating nearly an hour a day for most of my entire adult life.
Yes.
And like a lot of women, I really wanted to be of service. So I was very engaged in a very busy life, right? Because we're so encouraged to be helpful, to help other people, to extend ourselves. And, that is kind of selfish if you're not doing that, right? We get
Correct.
These messages from all of our social programming, really.
We're encouraged to be of service.
We are,
yeah.
And to be busy, right? And so I lived a very busy life. And I ended up getting involved in higher ed and helping at-risk students, which I had been one myself. But I worked my way through my master's degree and a doctorate degree. It became a college dean.
Wow.
And I guess you live in the area, right?
Correct.
So I live in Vancouver. I was commuting to Salem.
Yeah, I live in Kelowna, more inland.
Where?
Kelowna. The Okanagan.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm not sure where that is.
Yeah.
But in between, while I was earning my doctorate, I would drive past a new friend's house and we started practicing energy. And I started really finding myself sensitive to it. It just felt like a massage for me. And sometimes I'd stop on my way home and let her practice on me, right? And then I'd start practicing. And
so is this energy work a little bit like there is another kind of, it's not yoga that people do that's on an energetic level. I forget the name of it now. But when we talk about energetic working on somebody, does that mean like with your hands? Like how?
You can use your hands, you can use your intention. There are actually quite a lot of ways to do it.
Got yeah.
She was a
Reiki.
school psychologist.
Sorry, Anna. The name I forgot was Reiki. That's the only modality that I have been introduced to that is kind of like energetic. So that's why I was asking what style of energetic work
I think that it's probably the most well-known.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Gotcha. But you're
But
saying that there's all kinds of different methods and ways, and you
there
started
are,
getting into that.
and I started getting into it and just finding it so interesting.
Yes.
And so it's kind of a hobby, right? But not one I would tell anyone. Like,
I gotcha.
I didn't want
Because it might
anybody
be too
to know.
mysterious. It's like, it's probably too out there, right? People will not believe you, or I understand that.
Right. And,
Yeah.
I was earning a doctorate, becoming a college dean. I mean,
Science.
I did not want any of this to undermine my, to question my morals or my sanity or, right.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
And I had ended up having quite a lot of experience with it, but I never really felt like, oh, I want to be a healer. You meet so many people who want to be a healer, and I never felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
I only wanted to do it really for myself and my family. But I was commuting from Vancouver down to Salem, which is awful. It's like an hour and a half for sure, and heavy traffic. And I was channeling. I had started channeling, and I'm getting all this encouragement about writing a book, and I thought they were crazy.
Okay. So when you talk about channeling, just so that people can understand this, there are many different ways of channeling. And the person that I know that's kind of famous for channeling is a lady called Abraham Hicks. And she channels
love Esther.
A person called Abraham, and he gives these messages through her. So that's one way of channeling. So what was your way of experiencing the channeling?
Esther, when Esther channels, and I love her work,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care where a message comes from if it's good. And she channels a lot of really good information. Now, when she does it, she essentially shuts Esther down and lets them come through.
Gotcha. So she gets out of the way and then allows that to come through her.
Right. I don't do
Gotcha.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can talk to other beings as if they're in the room with me. And I hear them just as much as I hear you.
Yes, gotcha. And that has some people can understand that, like when we are in this reality, there seems to be a veil that you can't see on the other side. And then when people dissolve, in a way, the ego or the ego mind to a certain extent, then that allows them to have access to this other side that we can't see. Is that how people can understand it?
Well, I think everybody's different. Some people, so you asked about clairvoyance.
Yeah.
And that is only one of many, right? Being empathic or being an empath is really a form of psychic ability. That's when you have a heightened sense of other people's feelings.
Yes.
Right? And you even bring some of them into your field. And we'll talk more about that. But some people, many are clairsentient. That means that they get a feeling. They don't hear words like I do. They just get a strong sense of knowing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's lots to know about this.
Right. So we said empath, and then sentience, and then clairaudient is what I have, where I hear words.
Okay.
Like a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also clairvoyance, where you have kind of like insight into the future.
Gotcha.
Right?
Now, if I remember correctly, Anne, the lady that transcribed the A Course in Miracles, she was the clairaudient as well, because she heard the voice and she just was writing down. So that's correct, yeah?
Right. And we have this from a lot of people, when not just Course of Miracles, but even in the Bible. And then God said to me.
Yeah. And then God spoke to this one and to that one,
Jesus,
and he heard the voice of God.
To me.
Yes.
People.
Gotcha.
Well, and one thing I would say is that there are a lot of assumptions about who you're talking to. right? And Abraham Hicks, for instance, is a group of people, not just one being. It's a collective.
Okay.
And so it's always good to ask who you're talking with, because we can assume, we can make assumptions about who it is that's talking to us. And one thing that I would highly recommend everybody is to really tune into how you're feeling about this being that's talking to you, like what it feels like, because it's almost like getting to know, like us getting to know each other, right?
Yeah.
That you would have a strong sense that it might be me or that it wasn't me, right? Or you even sense that about your friends if they don't seem like their self on a particular day, right?
Gotcha. There's an energy change depending on what's going on.
Right.
Yes.
And if you know someone really well, you can tell when it's, you don't feel like you're talking to them.
Yeah. And I do remember there's also the connection that people have, relationships, for example, the close relationships or not so close as well. And you can be thousands of miles away from it. Say if it's a mother or child and the child is something bad happened, the mother can get a feeling or vice versa. So there's also that, energetic, like knowing.
Well, and what I would say to you is that that's normal.
Yes, of course.
I don't call it extra sensory. I just call it
it's all
inbuilt.
It's inbuilt in us. It's just whether we listen and act on it or whether we just let it go.
Well, I do think you can get shut down, and some of the ways that you shut down first and foremost are not believing you can do it or that it's possible.
Not believing in your ability to access whatever is available.
So if you don't have any belief, at all that that's possible, you're not, some
because
do.
Because we all have we create our own reality. So when we look, I remember one time there was a study done where the scientists said, like, when you look at a molecule, you're looking at the molecule changes it. You're observing of something is what creates the change. So that would make total sense that whatever, if you believe it's not there, it will not be there. If you believe it's there, it will be there. So whatever how you look at it is how it will appear. And I have my own experience of that. When I was very, very young, because I grew up in a Christian home and read the verses in the Bible. Like I remember it was the book of Psalms. I used to love the book of Psalms. And I remember having read some of those Psalms, and then later when I was older, I read it again. It was completely new. And I thought to myself, like, how is this possible? It's the same words written in this thousands of years ago. But because when I looked at it, I was different. Right. But I didn't realize that at the time because I think I was like 12 or something. I was very young. And of course, later I understood that so everything keeps changing because I'm changing. And it was the most wonderful thing in the world to discover that.
And that's so true with everything. And
so it makes us take responsibility for how we see and perceive things. So if I perceive something in a negative way, it's my responsibility to change it if I want to feel better. So it's a very great power to have.
Well, and what I would say is, so I left my job at Shemekia because it was grueling. And then for the first time, I had time. I had time to really think about things in a way that I didn't before. My children are adults now. They don't live with us. Well, one of them does, but, and I started kind of unraveling things. And I went through a process of making peace with my own past, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And it includes, and the reason I'm skipping to this is because what you said is so important. you know, when we have childhood traumas, right?
Yes.
We were a child.
3 years old,
And
4 years old, 5 years old.
well, or even as a teenager, you know,
Yeah.
you don't understand the full context as a child of what's happening, right?
Correct. Because you have such a
But,
small view of it. You have if you were 7 at the time, your view of it is as a 7-year-old.
right. You
Yeah.
know, we don't have the adult context. We don't have
No,
the knowledge.
because our frontal cortex is also not developed yet. Like, it only starts developing
Exactly.
later on until like what, 25 years old, right?
Oh, at
So there's
least,
no
you
way
know.
we can know anything.
And so the thing is that all these things are lodged in our energy field, right? We're like a mind, body, spirit complex,
Correct.
or we have our own personal matrix, right?
Yes.
That's connected to everybody else's in the greater world. But it becomes filled up with other people's stuff. If you're,
Yes.
so
Other people's beliefs, because when we're growing up, we're just taking, it's like conditioning, because we have no filters. So everything is just seeping in. You have no point of view really at that stage. And then you're just taking all the people around you, their point of view, the way they like it. And we're actually don't even know really who we are, because we are, a combination of all the people we've met.
it's really true. It's really
Yes.
true. And so, it's important to start clearing your field on a regular basis, because
Yes.
some of the things in your field aren't even yours.
Most of them probably, right?
A lot of it, a
Yeah.
lot of it. And once you start clearing, you start to feel different. You start to feel grounded. You start to feel a little more
More you.
centered, right?
Yes, more you, right. So just talking about this clearing, and I'd like to ask you, so for me personally, I have done this clearing through meditation, daily yoga. That's been my way of clearing. And then there's also other little things that came up along the way. Would you say, when you talk about clearing, what does that mean for you?
Well, I think that there are a lot of different ways to do it. And, honestly, as a Buddhist, I chanted. My practice has been chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo most of my life. However, I realized that a lot of times I was just kind of stuffing my feelings. I mean, I really thought that I was aware and processing my feelings, but there are so many expectations to be good, to be fine, that it's almost like if you're not okay, there's something wrong with you.
So like if you're on the spiritual path, let's say that, like if you're meditating every day, if you're Buddhist, there is an expectation that, oh, you should get your stuff together.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of pressure in our society for everybody to be handling everything okay, that you should be resilient, right? As an administrator working with adults in the college environment, that's what we do expect. We expect students to cope. We expect them to adapt. We expect them to be resilient.
Yes.
And the truth is that things happen that really hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
And we don't all really know how to work through it. Right?
Yes.
People get angry, they get hurt. I think a lot of people get stuck in self-righteous victimhood, which is a shame.
Self-righteous victimhood. Can you explain that a little for us so that we can understand
this
exactly what that means?
Hurt me. This person did this to me, and I can't get over it.
Gotcha.
But what in my own experience, I find that just leaves me angry, right? And ultimately, we want to get to the place where we can have mutual compassion, compassion for myself and compassion for this other person. But it might take me a while to get there.
Everybody's different.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about, you asked me about clearing my field.
Yes.
And one of the easiest ways, I think, that anybody can clear their field is to get in a really calm space and imagine like a silver rain just pummeling down through your energy field.
From the crown down.
Right.
Okay.
You know, I like to do meditations with tree energy.
Oh, me too. I love trees.
I love trees.
I love trees so much. I was just going to say to you earlier, just now, I was going to say, for me, one of the most quickest ways is if I just go to the trees. Like, I'm so lucky where I live, 2 minutes from my house, I can go into we have a little area called Shannon Lake, and I just go there for a walk or even a little run, and I come back and it's boom, gone.
You're rejuvenated.
Yeah. And I talk to the trees as I'm going there, and they're just taking all the negativity away from me. And I feel so grateful to the trees.
I'm so into trees. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the same. I love trees. And
so
whenever, and I can actually communicate with them for real. Like,
I do too.
Yeah. And I can hear information. Yeah. And sometimes some of the trees around us, they are struggling too. And sometimes they don't get enough water. Like, just here on my own street where I live, there's only one house where the people don't really give them water. And I always try to push the water down this way to them. And then we have to wait, obviously, for the rain and stuff. But so I do communicate with trees and they communicate back because they are living beings. There's like,
they are.
Like we are. They have communication systems that's huge, just like we have. Like humans and trees we have this huge network of communication. Like
they have communities.
Exactly.
We could do a whole second talk just
about we will talk about trees because I love it's my
way into trees.
Yeah, me too.
So
wonderful. So that will be our second podcast, trees.
So this is my favorite meditation. And that is that you ground yourself as if you're a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And you really imagine yourself reaching those roots way, way down into the earth.
Yeah.
And then you gather up all the energies that don't belong to you in your field, and you push them down through the roots into the earth.
Okay, that
is my number one favorite way. But a lot of people have their own way, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. You find your way. Like I do the roots as well. Because to me, the roots, because that's where also we connect with the earth on a very deep level. And Mother Earth we have no idea how amazing she is. So I actually also do that, go to the roots and I think that's why I get instantly energized, once I go to instantly energized.
And
like it's instantly energized. And I actually the energy back.
That energy back to you.
She does, yeah. And I tell other people to do that too. Yeah, I've told multiple people it's just like go to the trees and just get the energy there and get rid of your negativity because the trees will take it.
You can see I have like a whole stack of books behind me right now, and they're all on trees.
Okay, that's going to be out. We're definitely doing a second podcast on trees. I'm looking forward to that.
And I started coaxing out their divine essence. It's just so amazing.
Amazing. But let's get back to our topic today for making peace with your past. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that and how you're helping people to make peace with their past.
Okay. So, through my own experience, I started creating a series called You're Waking Up. A series of workshops to help people start looking at their experience and kind of separating it out a little bit. But essentially you want to get to a place where you can realize that, a lot of the ideas that we have about ourselves are really things that have been socially programmed or developed based on negative relationships with other people who are in their own unique place, right?
Yes.
And, right now, there is so much stuff going on, but the truth is, the only person we need to control is ourselves, right? And it's perfectly okay for us to be in a different place than someone else or to see something differently than someone else. In fact, that's normal, right? It's normal to see the world in a unique way. And that's how we enrich each other.
Yes.
Right? So when I help people in terms of making peace with their past, it's a 3-part series that starts with clearing their energy field and helping them start to clear their energy field. And also, these involve psychic readings on my part, where I identify beliefs that they have about the world. 2, because those shape how we experience things, right? Like if I have a belief in a punishing God, for instance, that's going to shape how I interpret what I read in the Bible or what I read in something else, or how I feel about my own behavior and what I do.
Because that all comes down to your point of view. Like every point of view that you have creates your reality, and that's with all things. So it's a good start for people to, if they are having an experience that they are not liking or that's causing them pain and suffering, then one of the greatest things you can do is to go back to your point of view about it, and then that's where you can change it,
and
because
so
that will change your experience.
Right. And a lot of it comes down to how you feel about your parents, right? Were you allowed to say no? Did they support your boundaries? Did they help you learn how to set healthy boundaries? A lot of us come from a different
And here's
time.
the thing, Anne, like nature prepares us to be parents very young when we don't really know much. Like as soon as a young girl starts to get her period, she can have babies, but she's maybe not ready to have babies. And so we never know. Sometimes we get parents who are completely not ready to be parents yet. And so they're just trying their very best to raise you the best they can, but that's all they can do. And so if that's not going to be enough for you as the child, then you've got some work to do later on. But it's not really, blaming the parents doesn't really help us. So maybe just trying to, like you said, maybe we can change our energy, we can change our point of view, because that's how we create the change and seeing and having a world and an experience that we truly want. That's the only thing we can do. That's where our power lies, is that what we do about it.
It's true. But it can take you a while to kind of unravel things, right?
Yes.
To get to where you're really looking at it differently. And so, the second part of it is that as children, and when you're empathic, you're wanting to help people and not knowing what that means. And then you're drawing their negative energy into your field. Okay. And so that's part of the second report, is how to, and I guide people through having some of those discussions, like what you would say to have that conversation about your feelings and needs that you had that were not regarded, in whatever way. And
that's a wonderful process to help
and
people
that's a
to move
pretty
past it. Yeah.
general, but most everybody has that problem, right? My dad didn't protect me. My mom didn't protect me. You know, we have.
Yes. Oh, yes. I didn't have enough food. I didn't have safety. I didn't have security. It could be anything. Whatever it is we make up is going to be our thing that we need to unravel and overcome in this world. And the one thing that I would like to say to listeners as we're listening to this conversation today is that one of the most important things we can do is to take responsibility for how we viewed it. Because again, and without judgment, of course, just with the curiosity that, oh, when I was 7 years old, I decided that the world was like this, but actually the world isn't like this. And so now I can change my point of view about that. Or when I was 13 years old, I thought my father was like this, but I can see that my point of view at that time was very limited. So now that I'm 30, I can change my point of view. And that's how you start to create the life that you truly want. Because like Ann just actually said, we don't even know that we are stuck in that point of view since we were so young. It's kind of, we're running on a program. But if you keep getting the same pain and suffering from your experience, then there is something that you can do.
You can instead of blaming your story.
You can rewrite it, because instead of blaming the external or the mother or the father or the circumstance around it, I think I read it somewhere. I don't know if it was actually in something that you wrote, Anne, but something happens to us for 10, 20 or 25 minutes. And then we worry about it for the rest of our life. Every time we just keep thinking about something that happened at that time, we worry about it and worry about it. And it's like, it's madness.
I did write that.
You did write it, yes.
It is something that I got from Abraham Hicks. And they said that when in their observation that we might have a bad experience that only lasts a few
10
minutes,
or 20 minutes, yeah.
But the bulk of our suffering comes from when we relive it over and over.
Oh, yes.
Right? And
yes,
we all do it, you know, especially women, but I know men do it too. We ruminate over things. They did this to
and
me.
I think it's mostly because we don't know any better. Like when I look back on my own journey and I think of all the things I did when I was younger that caused me pain and suffering, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But I didn't know any better. But as I did the work on myself, and that's what people need to know, is that we don't necessarily have to go out and change things outside in the world, but as you just work on your own self, and you will get your own realizations about life and things, and you can make better choices. You can change your point of view, because that's your power. And then you're going to see that your life is going to be better and better.
You are so right. You know, I really struggled with that as a younger person. I was very judgmental. And a lot of people would say they're doing the best they can.
They can, yes.
And I just could not believe that. I mean, I couldn't believe that.
You couldn't believe it, yeah.
It was like, really? I mean, come on. But
yes,
the truth is, now that when I look back at certain periods in my life where I was really fighting, really trying so hard, I was disappointed in my behavior sometimes. And I realized I was doing the best I could. I couldn't help it. At that time, I could not see out of the bubble I was in. And and I think once you realize that, you can really have a lot more care for yourself and other people.
Yes.
And I, you know, when we see people who are very judgmental, I think it's important to realize that they're probably talking to themselves that way.
Yeah, because however you are to others is how you are to yourself, because it cannot be anywhere else. Right. And so I always see that too. And I have a lot of compassion when I see that in people. I was like, don't worry, they'll get it. They don't, if they don't get it now, they'll get it later. They'll get it. But it's because I know that it happened to me too. And so that's the only way that we can have compassion, is that we've had our own experience of things. And so,
Yeah.
we can have
That
compassion.
I was in this time and I was trying my best and I wasn't perfect.
No. And none
In
of us.
fact, who is perfect?
And even now, none of us, we keep trying the best we can do. And every day is a new day, a new beginning. Like, I have this little thing where I say every 10 seconds, let's try again. Let's try again. Let's try again. And every 10 seconds, it's new. And that's the most wonderful thing, to see the world new. Because in every 10 seconds, I'm new. Or even every second, but I just at least give 10. So it's not, it's like, well, they're constantly on the change, on the change, on the change.
Well, I think, that becoming more aware of yourself is really important, because
it's the most important thing. Because from that place, you can change the world.
Are talking about, like I have a saying, affirmations are great, but what are you really vibrating? Right? You're really vibrating everything in your field, right? Whether it's unhealed or not, whether it's somebody else's or not, or maybe you think you're right to feel a certain way, but there's a big difference between being angry and being disappointed, or accepting that something happened, right? Energy is really an amount, right? And then frequency is the quality of the emotions or the feelings that you're having, or the thoughts. And so you can say an affirmation all you want, but if you're deeply fearful about something,
you won't have that frequency.
Right.
Because you didn't. It's kind of like this. If you're saying, like, I want to have tea in my cup, but you have to empty the cup if there's coffee in it. You can't just pour the tea in because the cup's full of coffee. So it's the same thing. You can't say, like, well, I want to be happy, or I want to vibrate this frequency of love and kindness. But if you haven't unpacked the stuff which you packed in, then you can't get a frequency that's going to vibrate love and kindness, because you've stuffed down other stuff.
And I would say, unfortunately, in our society, we have a lot of people saying things like, I have this from one of my, so much of our happiness depends on how we choose to look at the world. And that's true. But also some people have some pretty hard stuff to deal with. And so that's a little harsh. We haven't, I think that because of my work with the public and higher ed, I feel a strong desire to help unpack all of this in a way that can really help people move forward with their life.
And you do that through your making peace with your past workshops that you run. Great.
And through the way that I explain everything, because some people are victims, when you're and blaming, like I've been, we see a lot of writing based on Christianity. You don't see as much based on Buddhism, and people tend to think of karma as like this punishing thing,
which it is.
And I just think that that's a mean way of blaming somebody for a bad experience that they're having.
No. Yeah, karma is not a punishment. Yeah, no. Unfortunately, we've misdiagnosed that in the West.
I think so.
We really have.
Because our karma is really our habit, right? How we respond to things. And that's why the third of my Making Peace with Your Past series looks at imprinted behaviors, behaviors you learned in your family, right?
Conditioning.
And then helping clarify it in a way that helps you see it from maybe in a different way, right? But, a lot of our parents, lived through the Depression. They were maybe born in the Depression, or lived through World War I, World War II, and people adopted. And then there was Korea and Vietnam and, the Cold War. They developed all these coping skills that
Yes.
became part of how
life.
you lived, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so even though that's not who we are or what we need now, we have a lot of those traits because we grew up with it.
We do.
Right.
And we also now in this new era where everything is, you know, so like electronic and everything is like with computers. And so that's now causing a whole other layer of trauma for a lot of people. Because you can't do anything if you don't have a phone. You can't do anything if you don't, you know, if you don't have a bank card. You can't do anything if you don't have a computer. And for a lot of people coming from that era, that's very traumatic, you know?
Well, in communicating well, it's so easy to have a misunderstanding electronically because you don't see the
you send a message, you don't know if the message, you know, like you can't read it as well as when you have that physical contact. You can see the body language, you can feel the energy, you know. It's harder when it's just words on a text.
Right. And if you don't know the other person well, or there isn't a sense of trust, then
and we see that now. We see that now in like when people go on these dating sites, for example. There's a lot of misery there because of, not all misery, there's some good things too, of course, but there's a lot of misery there because people, like you said, they're not seeing each other, they're not reading the energy, so they're just trying to meet people and understand them through these text messages that they are getting. And it's not so easy. So there's a whole nother level of stuff that's going on, you know, with social media right now and how we are communicating and how the world is changing. And for a lot of people, that's traumatic.
It is. I see that. I've been married 29 years.
Yes.
And so I would say that when you're when you're in a long-term relationship, you have to use good communication. You have to ask, oh, well, what did you mean when you said this? Or, you know, that's a part of a healthy relationship, right?
Yes.
And, you know, if you're having misunderstandings with someone even before you get in a relationship, then there's really no reason to go there, right?
Yeah,
but
it's not so good.
I don't know, maybe I'm old, but I still think meeting somebody, you know, by doing something that you enjoy and meeting somebody else who likes doing the same things is the best way to meet somebody. I just still think that. And I kind of wonder, would it ever have paired me up with my husband? I just don't know.
I don't know. I think I met my husband also. We've been married for 25 years, and it's like I don't understand how to do these things either. But I think that, I don't know. I think that you can meet somebody online too, of course. And I think that our consciousness supersedes everything, even social media. I think that those people that are supposed to meet, they will meet in various ways. It's just, unfortunately, now with the technology, that we're in this technology phase now, you know, we're out of that, what you call that phase that we just had, like, there's a name for it, but.
And so it goes back to what you're vibrating, right?
Exactly. So even if it's on a computer, you'll still match the person that you're supposed to be having an experience with. It's just, we have to get used to that.
Through that law of attraction, right? You're attracting, you're building momentum, whether you know it or not, for whatever's coming. And it's going to find a way to you, whether it's through the computer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. So people don't have to worry so much if you have to now use a computer to meet someone. I think that vibration is still greater than any social media or any computer. The human, you know, our human experience is just greater than all of it. So don't get too worried about it. But Anne, I would like to thank you today for joining me and for talking a little bit about your journey and also in particularly about what your work is with regarding making peace with your past. And I am going to put all your information in the bottom of the podcast. Yes, so if anybody wants to reach out or want to even take this workshop with you, I think it's wonderful what you're doing. And again, there's so many different ways, and there's all different people that might feel connected to the way that you're doing it or someone else is doing it. It doesn't really matter what technique it is, as long as you're going to start to do something. If you're feeling that your life is, you know, not where you want it to be, or you're feeling you have so much pain and suffering, or you feeling like I keep creating being the victim over and over, just like how we talked about, like, just know that it's not your fault. Like, as soon as you know better, then you can do better. And so that's why I like to bring all different kinds of people and guests on, because I believe that our spirituality is there daily in our daily life with whatever we're doing. It can be something as mundane as cooking or cleaning, having a conversation with your loved ones, going for a walk in the forest. It's all part of our spirituality. And like, you are the one that can change everything, because when you look at things, the way you look at them changes them. And that's how powerful you are. So we'll leave it there today for our listeners to know